2005, Chris Paul gets drafted. 3 years later, he turns the Hornets from one of the worst teams in the league to a team that can compete with the Spurs, the Lakers, and the Mavs, and every other contender. 2011, Chris Paul gets traded to the LA Clippers. In a few months, he turns the entire franchise around, becoming a legitimate powerhouse in the West, a contender for many years. 2017, Chris Paul gets traded to the Houston Rockets. In his first year there, the Rockets secured the best record in their franchise history and pushed the Warriors to 7 games. It was the closest the Rockets have ever been to beating them, and if Paul didn't get injured, maybe it would have turned out differently. 2019, Paul gets traded to OKC for Russell Westbrook. Initially, most people thought the Thunder were no longer a playoff team and Paul was done, as the recent injury problems slowed him down drastically. But he proved the critics wrong. Paul led them to a very respectable record and pushed his former team to the brink of elimination. 2020, Paul joins the Phoenix Suns, a team that struggled for many years with little signs of hope. They're now near the top of the conference, competing right beside the best teams of the league. Everywhere he goes, every team he joins, Chris Paul makes them objectively better. You see it in the numbers, you see it in the stats, in every metric available, Paul makes his team better, period. How's it going, folks? My name's Andy, and today, let's take a look at how Chris Paul has transformed the Suns into a powerhouse. That's something I haven't said for a long time. The Suns are actually a legitimate contender for the first time since the Steve Nash era. So, where do we start? Well, let's first compare this team with the previous version of the Suns the year before. In the 2019-20 season, they also exceeded expectations. Many expected them to be near the bottom of the standings, but they did pretty well, especially when the season started back up in Disney World, where they went 8-0, winning all of their remaining games in the bubble. It was a small sample size, but impressive nonetheless. We thought the Suns would keep this roster together and see how they do in a fresh new season. The chemistry looked great, and maybe this would be their team moving forward. However, over the offseason, the Suns pulled the trigger on a massive trade. Ricky Rubio and Kelly Oubre, two guys who were very valuable to the team, were traded away for Chris Paul. At first, we weren't too sure about this trade. On one hand, Rubio and Oubre were very helpful and improved the team a lot. On the other hand, even though Paul is pretty old at this point, he proved in OKC that he still got it. There were some doubters, but they quickly went away. It doesn't matter if Chris Paul is 40 years old. His professionalism and knowledge about the game will always make any team he's on better. Also, his playstyle will age better than most other point guards. Coach Monty Williams echoed the statement. He's the kind of guy that changes organizations. Everywhere he has gone, he has made everybody better. That's just who Chris is. But what is it about him that makes him such an impactful player? Just looking at his raw numbers, he's putting up 16-9, above average efficiency, but is this all it takes to turn a team from outside the playoffs to near the top of the conference? The Suns did not make any other notable additions besides Paul. Let me just tell you this, we said the same thing about Steve Nash back in the day. While both their numbers are great, their impact is even greater. Every time Paul joins a team, he doesn't try and fit into any system, he is the system. The offense completely transforms when he steps onto the court. His vision, his passing, they're both at an all-time level, as good as any player we've ever seen. His former coaches and players who played with him previously have stated how he's not just a coach on the floor, but he's a coach everywhere. On the bench when he's resting, during a timeout, off the court, on the court, Paul is always paying attention. He's always vocal and provides leadership and gives advice when it's needed. Even as a young guy on the Hornets, he was always like this. David West, his former teammate, has always praised Chris Paul throughout their careers. Despite West being older, it was Paul who took the reins as the leader. You could read articles from back in like 2009, even in his early 20s, he was described as a basketball genius. Hell, even before he came into the NBA, scouts thought the same way. However, throughout the years, his playstyle changed. With numerous leg injuries, his explosiveness and athleticism is nowhere near what it used to be. But even so, his brain is still perfectly fine, and that's all he needs. His teammate, Cameron Johnson, has been the team's designated stretch 4, and he's been seeing more open shots than he's ever seen in his life. He explained how easy it was playing next to him. Chris's mindset is just different. It rubs off on all of us. He's always a couple of steps ahead of the game. He's always teaching. He's pulling us aside, telling us things to pick up, when to roll, when to pop, where to rotate. He really seems to see everything out there. Just personally, as a fan of CP3, I feel like he's always been better when he plays on teams with younger rosters. Mostly cause, while he's clearly very smart, it might come off as being too abrasive and pushy sometimes. Over the years, we saw him clash with his all-star teammates like Blake Griffin and James Harden, and both of them have admitted that CP3's personality is hard to get along with, as sometimes he's too controlling. Regardless, even though they had their mishaps, their teams still reached a whole new level with him, so the results speak for themselves. But on younger teams like OKC and Phoenix, where a lot of players look up to him and listen to him, these are the perfect situations for Paul. So how does it look on the court? On offense, the main difference you'll see is how well the Suns are taking care of the ball. You know, we always talk about what certain players are known for and what they'll be remembered for. For Paul, it's his assist-to-turnover ratio. He has the second best assist-to-turnover ratio in NBA history, behind Muggsy Bogues. Coupled with the second highest offensive rating ever, Paul is a basketball savant. The Suns, as a team, now have the third best assist-to-turnover ratio in the league, along with being the fifth lowest in turnovers per game. That's a noticeable improvement compared to years past. You could clearly see how he transformed the offense. If somebody's open, he's going to see them. The Suns are top 5 in the league in shooting wide-open shots, which, according to the definition from NBA.com, they're shots where the defender are at least 6 feet away. We saw similarities when Rubio was on the team before, but unlike Rubio, Paul is a real threat to score. Against Rubio, defenders usually go under the screens and can close out faster on other shooters if he makes a pass. For Paul, his ability to score off the pick forces the defense to play him tighter, and thus giving more space to his teammates. Although sometimes Paul holds the ball for way too long, which was a common criticism in the past, but in this case, it's been working well, cause the Suns need his meticulous maneuvering and precise passes. He's also got the full support of Coach Monty. They go a long way back, and the reunion has been a bright spot for both of their lives. Both Ayton and Booker, the cornerstones of the franchise, have sought his help throughout the season, and both of them finally feel like they have a veteran leader to look up to. Booker has only said positive things about Paul. Chris has gone through everything we're trying to get to in this league. Big games, playoffs, we want to get to that point. And with Chris, we're headed in the right direction. For a young guy who's been yearning the playoffs ever since he came into the NBA, looks like Booker will finally get his wish. Defensively, the Suns are even better. Ever since hiring Monty Williams, they've shot up the charts, going from 29th to 17th to 3rd in defensive rating. The thing is, the success cannot be measured by blocks or steals. In fact, the Suns are 29th in the league in steals per game and 26th in blocks. That's not what their defense is about. Their defense is subtle and silent, focusing on quick rotations, good communication, and simply being in the right spot at the right time to contest every shot. It might seem easy when I say it like that, but on paper, it's been hard for them to do in past years. Cause, for being such a young team, it's hard to nail that stuff down consistently. With Paul and Monty, they constantly stress the importance of being disciplined on defense. Even if their shots aren't falling, you can't get demoralized and slack off on D. As Chris Paul said, some nights, the shots may not fall, and the shooting might be inconsistent, but defense is what travels. That's something you can always rely on if your shot is off. Paul also doesn't get enough credit for his attitude. If you ever see a player of his caliber go to a team like the Suns or even OKC during a rebuild, those teams were expected to be out of the playoff race. Usually if a star player is in that situation, he negotiates a buyout or demands a trade. But for Paul, he got traded to two teams that were not in contention, yet he still was as vocal as ever, as excited as ever to be there. During his time in OKC, he helped Shai Gilgeous-Alexander tremendously and set a great foundation for the franchise moving forward. Now, it's the same story in Phoenix. Even if he doesn't stay here for long, he's gonna have a lasting impact in this organization. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope y'all enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments your thoughts on CP3. Where would you rank him all time? It's hard to place him cause I think he has so many individual accolades, but the championship has always eluded him. There's also a slight reputation of underperforming in the playoffs, but statistically, that's not true. Even if he did have some moments where he looked bad, he still had many times where he took over games. Let me know what you think. What are your thoughts about him and his time in Phoenix so far? Anyway, as always, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.